The reason I've sold so many companies is because I built them to exit. And when you build something to exit, it helps you run and operate these companies properly.
When you talk about exiting a company, what are some of the things that you would recommend?
3 things that everyone has to know in exiting a company. But number 1,
Meet Eddie Wilson, the king of exits. He's a serial entrepreneur who's built and exited over 90 companies. He's the creator of the Empire Operating System,
co-founder of the Aspire Tour, and a respected speaker, investor, and philanthropist. Today, he shares his blueprint for legacy and impact. Stay tuned.
whatever you believe is going to give you fulfillment, hurry up and get to the end of that road, because it's most likely not going to get you fulfillment.
What would you say is the most impactful trip that you've taken with a nonprofit?
So it's always that last trip, I think. This last trip I took, it was 18 business owners with me. We built an orphanage in one of the roughest places in Colombia.
What would you say is going to be the most attractive model for people that are out there trying to acquire businesses?
So what I say is the most attractive thing today is to find a service-based business that's owned by a baby boomer, that they just want some sort of legacy in that business.
Can someone who doesn't have the fire in them get the fire?
Most people, they have this little flame inside, but they're not around the right people. Because they're not around the right people, it doesn't stoke that flame.
Going to college. Percentage-wise, how much does that really feed into real entrepreneurship?
That's a hard question, and here's why. Because
Welcome to another episode of a Healthy Point of View podcast. I'm your host, Sam Tejada. And as you know, we're bringing experts from all over the world talking about health, wellness, mindset, and beauty. So today we have an expert. This guy here, people know him as the king of exits. Why is that so? He's exited over 100 different companies for a lot of money. Yeah, I'll let him explain that to you guys. This is somebody that you guys probably have seen on many different stages, on many different podcasts. You've probably have heard of the Aspire Tour events that go around with a lot of celebrities and whatnot. He's one of the co-founders. Today we have Eddie Wilson here at A Healthy Point of View. Brother, pleasure to have you here,
thank
man.
you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So, man, serial entrepreneur, man, a guy like you, you're moving around. I can only imagine the level of stress
Mhm.
you have every single day. But money. I've done my research on you, and money is not really what moves you.
No,
You
not at
know,
all.
it's there's one thing that I saw that really hit home, and it was the word impact.
Mhm.
You're all about impact, man. So let's talk about that.
Sure.
Like, let's talk about you and really what moves you, so other people can really get the feel of it.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. For me, money is always fleeting, and I grew up in a family where my dad taught me to care more about my time than to care about my money, and so you put a lot of time and effort into building something, and like a lot of entrepreneurs, especially like in this space, and you find that you get to that mountaintop and you feel like you've accomplished something, and then you just look at, there's another mountaintop and there's another mountaintop, and it's like you just can never get that satisfaction. And so you realize that, like, satisfaction doesn't come at the end of another dollar, another vacation, another house, another car. Satisfaction comes from something deeper,
Right.
and that fulfillment that only comes with serving and helping others. And so yeah, impact is my word. Impact Others is the name of my nonprofit, my global nonprofit, and it's what I'm passionate about.
I love that, man.
Yeah,
So, do you feel like you have a God-given purpose?
100%. Yeah.
What is your God-given
My
purpose?
God-given purpose is to, and I believe what brings me fulfillment in this life is to make and create impact on other people that cannot help themselves. And so I believe that my God-given purpose every day is to show up in people's lives that can't necessarily get where they need to go or where they want to go unless I show up and help them. And so whether it's the homeless guy on the street, or a barista in a coffee shop, or whether it's an orphan, in one of our orphanages.
I love that, man. How young were you when you actually knew what your God-given purpose was?
That was took a long time to figure that one out. I was getting glimpses of it in my 20s, and I started to get some of that fulfillment. I started my nonprofit in 2013, but it wasn't until I sold all my companies in 2019 where I lost my identity. And so now you have a bunch of money, and your identity's tied to these companies, and now that's gone.
Wow.
And you go from thousands of employees to dozens of employees, And I went through a period of strong depression. Like you, all of a sudden, it's like, what am I working for? Like
Yeah.
what's next? And so I've been there twice in my life, and until I really decided that I was going to go full into this idea of creating impact in the world, I don't know that I truly discovered it. But then once I found it, it was just like this massive, it was everything to me, and it still is today. Everything I do is tied to that purpose.
Yeah. And Eddie, one of the things like you said you exited twice,
Hmm.
right? And the second time you exited, I believe it was the second time. It was for quite a bit, over
Yeah.
$1 billion,
Mhm.
right? Most people that have never experienced that, they're like, what is this guy talking about?
Right. Yeah.
It's like he's got all the money in the world.
Yeah.
But one of the things I always touch up on is like a lot of people who have that tremendous amount of money.
Mhm.
These are the people that go through severe depression.
Sure.
Even when you look at a lot of celebrities, right?
Mhm.
They got all the money that you could think of,
Right.
and they're the ones, overdosing from
Mhm.
drug
Right.
overdose because they're sedating,
Right.
from the depression and stuff. So I want to dive a little bit deeper on that because I think this is something
Sure.
that people have to understand. It's not about all about the money
Mhm.
because you went through building this empire,
Mhm.
right? To all of a sudden selling all these businesses where that's like every morning you wake up and that's what you're doing,
What you
you
do.
know? And then all of a sudden, and I've heard other guys go through this before where it's just like, I just sold my business and I don't even have access to my email anymore.
Mhm. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
It's weird things like that that really eat at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sold my first company. I sold in my 20s, and that was a little bit more like a hostile takeover. Like it wasn't intentional. I lost some money on that one, so that one it wasn't as big, But I still struggled because I lost my identity. It wasn't. It was like this is what I had built, and this is who I am. Then I started building the second time, I started building all these other companies. I got up to 86 companies. I sold 76 of those in 1 year. And it was a wild year. But you're so busy. You're climbing the mountain. You're busy doing all this stuff. And all of a sudden, when everything's gone, right? I don't have an email anymore. There are no business cards attached to my name anymore. There's no place for me to drive in and park my car. Like there is no reserve parking spot. There is
Wow.
no more office. Like it's weird, like, and so you all of a sudden you find this time period, you're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go relax. I'm gonna go chill out, just go do something fun." Well, when you're wired like we were wired, it's tough to do that, just to turn it completely off. And I've tried to do that twice in my life. It doesn't go well either time. And but I think it's just like I have this God-given desire and passion and calling that I needed to put into something. And it's like when that is inside and you have no outlet for it, it's discouraging.
Yeah, I bet, man.
Yeah.
I bet. The nonprofit came after the second exit?
So I started the nonprofit in 2013, just trying to. I was doing well financially, was doing well, had some exits and stuff like that, and so I was doing philanthropic work because I felt like it was the right thing to do, but it wasn't the passion of my life. I wasn't focused on it. I paid people to do it,
Right.
like I had a staff and I gave that staff money, and then I would have that staff report to me. It was just essentially another business, right? That made me feel something,
Right.
but it wasn't until I started going, it wasn't until I took my sons with me. It wasn't until I was participating that it actually made an impact in my
Like
life.
actually going to these other
Oh yeah.
countries and
I still today. I mean, my business partner Andrew, he's a wild man. He's kind of a visionary, and I'm the operator. I'm the one that's usually in the suit and tie. And it's funny. I go and I build the roads. I build the parks. I build the orphanages. Like I roll up my sleeves. Like I
oh
do
wow.
it because there's something about physically doing something that I need, and in order to feel that fulfillment. And so yeah, so now I go on 4 or 5 trips. I take 20, 30 business owners with me. We go experience it together, and it's a lot
Wow.
of fun.
What would you say is the most impactful trip that you've taken,
Mm.
with the nonprofit?
We're in 103 countries now, so
Oh
we're
wow.
really, really broad. And we feed and educate about 5,200 children a day in our orphanages and feeding centers. And so it's always that last trip, I think. It's like because I mean, obviously, I had the very first trip that like I got the vision for it. That was a big trip for me. But this last trip, I took I think it was 18 business owners with me. We built an orphanage in one of the roughest places in Colombia. It's a place called Cafe Madrid. All the gangs, all of the cartel, they all kind of come together there. More humans are trafficked out of this area than any other place on the planet,
Oh
they
wow.
say. And we built what's called the Refuge of Life Center. And we bought a building on the corner of the worst part of town,
Man.
like all right on the square. And that's where the orphanage is. That's where the rescue center is. So watching those people see those children and watching us, the ability to rescue. Now, I went there about 3 years ago, and I saw some of the most horrific things I've ever seen in my life. So to come back 3 years later, having built something and having the ability to pull people out of some of those situations was really, really impactful.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. Like, what made you go there?
Yeah.
But did you have someone advising you on that,
Mhm.
or is it something that you saw? How you said you went there like
Yeah.
what 3 years in advance
Yeah.
and saw some horrific stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what makes you say, hey, you know
Mhm.
what? I want to go to Colombia.
Yeah.
This place is what needs my help.
It started off with me just seeing need around the world. So I was in Honduras. That was our very first site. And I saw kids that needed help, and we just jumped in. Then I was in India on business, and I saw an opportunity in India to serve. It was kind of that in the beginning. Now I have regional directors all over the world that essentially are researching and looking at areas that we can
Mm.
go make impact in. And so in Bucaramanga, Colombia, is where our regional director is, and Cafe Madrid is an area just outside of that. And so it was an area that we had targeted because of the blight and the issues and the mess that goes on there. And we went and looked at it, 2.5, 3 years ago. I almost didn't get back into the country during when the country shut down for COVID because I was there.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, and that was the first time I'd seen it. I went back after kind of COVID restrictions to see what was actually going on there, and that's the point we said we're gonna do something here, just not sure what.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you set it up like
Mhm.
the orphanage over there,
Sure.
what is it that you guys implement
Yeah.
over
So
there?
we have so that place will have and can have about 50 children, and we're actually buying the building next to it to try to get it to 100. But we have feeding programs, education, nutrition, and then we help them. So like, there's actually a great school that the kids can go to. So they actually go to a normal school. Columbia actually has a decent education system, but then we bring them back and we tutor them, and then we also teach them business principles and various other things, financial IQ and stuff like that. We'll teach them, and then we bring in a regimen of doctors, dentists, eye doctors, all that type of stuff to these
Oh,
locations to
that's pretty
really serve
cool.
these kids. So
Wow.
we'll help them with nutrition, with education, and then with a lot of healthcare as well.
So some of those business people that go on that trip with you, a lot of the times, is it like the first time going?
Oh yeah,
Ho
almost always.
how do they I
They
mean, it's gotta be exciting, like, you just
Yeah,
watching their
yeah.
facial expressions and stuff when they're
Yeah.
there.
I still get extreme joy out of seeing the children we help and something coming out of nowhere. But I think I get more excitement watching an entrepreneur who thinks that what they're chasing in this life is everything, and then them seeing that going, "Wait a minute, there's something else here."
Yeah.
And we see the lights go on there, and here's what happens. We'll go spend time with the orphans, and we'll do piñatas and pizza and ice cream, and we'll just like I'll let the people just like take, like really bring an amazing time to these orphans. But I already know that the orphans could care less. What they really want is time. And so you'll watch them kind of pair up, and then all of a sudden you'll see a lady sitting on the ground and she's getting hugged by an orphan, or you see a guy on the soccer field playing with a couple of them, and it's like, and you'll start to see those bonds happen. And then at the end of the day, I always take the orphans and I say, "Hey, would you mind just telling these guys thank you and talk to them about your experience?" So we had to translate the one in Colombia, and this one little boy who was out playing soccer with one of the guys and just having a blast all day long. He said, "The thing that meant the most to me," he said, "was that you spent time with me." He was like, "I didn't care about the pizza, I didn't care about the ice cream." And he looked right at one of the business and he like pointed at him like,
Wow.
"You." It's like,
Wow. Yeah.
and to watch these, business owners that think that the biggest thing they could ever do is build and sell or exit a company, sit there and realize like, the biggest thing you do is make an impact in that kid's life.
Yeah,
That
man.
nobody's shown up for that kid,
Wow.
you know?
That's impact right
Yeah.
there. And when you can feel that vibration of
Mm.
frequency in that kid,
Yeah.
right? And his eyes light up and he
Yeah.
says exactly what you
Yeah.
said, that the most impactful portion was the time spent.
Mhm.
Man, that's powerful.
It's powerful.
Yeah. So I know a lot of the listeners right now are probably wondering, like, this wealthy businessman
Yeah.
gringo going
Yeah.
to Colombia. Do you go there with security?
I do sometimes. Yeah. We have some countries that I have to have security in. We take security into the Middle East a lot and into Venezuela and places like that. Colombia, I had a guy with me, and he's a business owner as well, but he owns a security company and different
Okay.
things. And so he was just kind of undercover, but with me and just making sure I don't when I go in by myself or with a couple of guys, I'm in and out fast. We move quick. But when I take a group, I just always want to make sure that they're safe.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Absolutely. That's amazing, man. I love that. So all right, you're doing the philanthropy work
Mhm.
and doing things for the communities out there around the world, not just here in the US. So let's talk about you being the king of exits.
Sure.
So where did that name come from?
Yeah.
Obviously from exiting
Yeah.
businesses, but like
Yeah.
who labeled you with that?
So I was asked to speak after I sold all those companies. Started getting asked to speak, and I refused. I was like, I don't really want the spotlight. I'm not interested in social media. And I was talking to a big social influencer, and he was like, everything you want is on the other side of exposure. And I was like, no, I think everything I don't want is on the other side of exposure. And he said, no, I'm telling you, he's like, raise money, find good people. He was like, you should put yourself out there a little more. So I decided I'd start taking some speaking engagements. I was getting phone calls, and there was this group, I think it was called like the Exit Ramp or something like that. It was a guy, and I went in and talked to him, and this guy named Nick, he called me the king of exits, and he was just like joking around, like this guy is the king of exits. Well, then Forbes and a few other magazines picked it up because when they looked at it and they're like, man, you legitimately sold over 100 legit companies with real people, and so and it was in that one calendar year, so it's been kind of picked up by everybody.
Now you're the king of exits,
Now,
man.
now, yeah, but it came from Nick.
You got a
Yeah.
tattoo or something that says king
No,
of exits?
no,
Not
no
yet.
tattoo.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. So king of exits, earlier in our
Mhm,
conversations, you were talking about you're climbing up a mountain.
mhm.
You get to the top, but then you notice that there's another mountain
Sure.
and then another mountain. And one of the things in business, it's like, I remember when I started my company with $500 in my back pocket on my
Mhm.
days off from the fire department,
Yeah.
right? Haven't taken a penny from anyone.
Yeah.
And look where we're at today.
Yeah.
And most people, they'll look at me and says, dude, when does it stop?
Right.
And in all reality, like it doesn't stop.
Mhm.
Like I can just keep on going bigger. I can go, global,
Right.
international, and it's just like then you start doing something else in the health and wellness, and it all falls under this
Yeah.
umbrella of a brand that I have, Liquid Vita, right? So one of my business mentors early on, who was one of the biggest, he was the biggest manufacturer of Coca-Cola in North America.
Mhm.
He actually told me early on, he said, Sam, a business plan without an exit strategy is an incomplete business plan.
100%.
I want to hear your input on that.
Yeah. There's 5 phases in business. There's startup, and that's kind of it's self-explanatory. Then I move into perseverance. That's where a majority of small businesses are. They're in and out of profit. They don't have a clear plan. Then you move into viability. Viability then moves into scale. And then the fifth phase of business is succession. No matter what, you will exit your business. Whether you walk away, it fails, you sell it, you turn it over to somebody, right? Like you're going to exit your business. And I always say that when you start from perseverance into viability, which is like you're truly building a viable company, you should start the exit planning then. The
Okay.
reason I've sold so many companies is because I built them to exit. Now, some of them I never exited. I still have them, but I built them to exit. And when you build something to exit, it helps you run and operate these companies properly, right? Most people use their small business as a bank account, and it's a tax deduction strategy, and it's
Right.
whatever it is, but it's not a business. And I find a lot of business owners are playing business but not really doing business. And so moving into true viability, you should have a succession plan. And that succession plan might just be who's the person that's stepping into the seat after you, or it might be actually selling the business.
Yeah, because when you're consistently growing and let's say you're bootstrap,
Mhm,
right? And you're taking a lot of the money that's coming in and putting it back into the business,
mhm.
right? When you talk about exiting a company, what are some of the things that you're preparing
Yeah,
for? More on a
sure.
financial
Yeah,
basis. Like,
sure.
what are some of the things that you would recommend?
3 things that everyone has to know in exiting a company, and it's about building enterprise value, first of all. But number one, you have to know your numbers, right? And so you have to a viable company is a profitable company. We're not in business to lose money, right? I mean, we're in business to make money. And so you have to know your numbers. And it has to be architected in a way that it is sustainable, right? Number two is you have to have an operating system. You have to be able to replicate what you do. You have to be able to hand the manual off to someone else, and someone else has to be able to do it, or else it's not a viable company.
Right.
And number three, people don't take into consideration their IP. What sets them apart? What's different about them, right? Like, what is the thing that's uniquely different about the way that they do business, their data, their software, their whatever it is? And so, when you're moving from viability into, or from perseverance into viability, you should take those three things into consideration, right? Like profitability, your bottom line, your numbers. Number two, you should say, can I replicate this? Do I have a true operating system for how this business operates? And number three, what's my IP, and is it documented, and does it actually provide true value to this company?
Yeah, IP is definitely important.
Mhm.
In there's different type of IP,
Sure.
right? And this is more for like a lot of the doctors that tune into the
Mhm.
podcast that have more of the boutique clinics, but are trying
Sure.
to build it into something else. When it comes to that intellectual property, the
Mhm.
IP, what are the different type of IPs that businesses can have?
Sure. I just helped a doctor exit his practice in the last 2 weeks. Functional medicine doctor, had a compounding pharmacy, various other things, and he had IP. It just wasn't documented. He
Mm,
he treated patients very specifically based off of the way that he read their blood panels. He had a very specific process. And in that last year, all we did was we documented the process, and we trained one additional person in his office on how to do it. Right. So now the next clinic, or it was a private equity group that was essentially buying him, now they have that IP and someone trained to actually do it. So there's various, there's various things in IP. You can have technology, right?
right.
Like a way that you process or function. It can be your data. If you have a certain subset of a population, right? Like if you've got like let's say if I was a doctor and I only serviced professional athletes, that technically could be IP as well, because I've got a subset of the population that maybe is more desirable. It could be the way that you practice and the way that you function, and so all of those things can be IP, but they're never recognized as IP unless they're documented and you can show true value tied to them.
Right,
Yeah,
right, right. So when we talk about IP, which obviously I got a bunch of my
yeah,
IP, I got the
I
wall right
see
up
it.
there
I
talking
see
about
it.
IP, and that's just a few out of many
Yeah,
because obviously I got a lot of
hmm,
copywriting that
hmm,
we do with protocols and stuff that like
sure.
how you're talking about. But technology is one
Hmm,
too. Have you seen in business, especially today with a lot of AI and
hmm,
softwares, and
yeah,
you're talking about operating systems?
yeah.
Are these things that are also being documented as intellectual property?
100%. And it's the thing that's valued the most today. If you have a technology, for instance, I sold a big insurance company. The insurance company got an extra 4 times EBITDA because I had a proprietary way by which I underwrote the insurance. I actually built that as a separate company. It had separate software, and it underwrote the properties, the property and casualty, the P&C business. It underwrote it. So when I sold it, I said, well, you can have my insurance company, but if you have this proprietary way to underwrite, it's going to help you be more efficient over here. So I'm going to sell these together. And then what it did was it increased my multiple.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow. And I keep on hearing that when it comes to technology, like if
Mhm.
you have a SaaS that
Mhm.
you've developed,
Sure.
that's where a lot of the big multiples come
SaaS
into.
is popular because in private equity right now, SaaS is predictable. And so you have this reoccurring revenue model. And let's say they're buying, your software as a service, SaaS, and it's reoccurring. Now, a private equity firm can look at that and say, based on that reoccurring model, I can project how long it's going to continue. And then they'll pay you on top line revenue versus just EBITDA.
Mm.
That's why SaaS is so popular, because now it's not about what you keep, it's about what you actually bill.
Is that because it's more subscription based?
Subscription based, it's more predictable. Yep.
Yeah. So in your opinion, when it comes to exiting
Mhm,
a business, right? Um, what would you say is going to be the most attractive model
mhm.
for people that are out there trying to acquire businesses?
Yeah. So, people that are buying businesses right now, and this is a crazy stat, but there's somewhere between 8 and 15 million baby boomers that'll leave their place of business that they own. They've got customers in the next 7 to 10 years, right? There's a massive wealth transfer happening, and that's the small business that's going to transfer somewhere. The unfortunate thing right now is less than 2% of these businesses are actually selling. So
Oh, wow.
98% of these businesses are not selling, and you've got a massive influx of them coming. So dental practices, chiropractic clinics, orthodontists, electricians, HVAC, it's like all of these are all owned by baby boomers in their 70s that they need to do something with this business. And they don't have a heir, they don't have a daughter, a son, or a granddaughter, grandson. They're going to take these businesses. And so a lot of them are just going to walk away. So what I say is the most attractive thing today is to find a service-based business that's owned by a baby boomer that they just want some sort of legacy in that business. They don't want it to just evaporate. They don't want all those customers to just go away.
Right.
And for them, they're not looking for a 10 times multiple on their exit. They're looking for this business and their employees to stay in business past them. And so if I was, and as I'm acquiring businesses right now, I'm rolling up tax firms right now. And that's the target. I'm going after that group of people that have built this book of business and they've done a great job for 30, 40, 50 years. And there's no succession plan.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You have a system that you've developed,
Hmm.
the Empire,
Yes.
right?
Yep. You got it.
So what is that?
Yeah, the Empire operating system is exactly what I was just talking about. In that, when you're looking to exit a business, they look at three things, and I get asked those three questions every single time. Bottom line dollars, right? EBITDA. What's your operating system? Where's the manual? If we buy this off of you, how do we know how to run it? And number three, what's your IP, right? What sets you apart? They're going to give you the highest level of multiple on that. Well, when I was looking at these businesses to sell, I was trying to create enterprise value and I was trying to find a platform. And so I used EOS, Traction, I used Scaling Up, I used Six Sigma, I used all these different systems, and realized that there really wasn't a one size fits all system, and there really wasn't one that like would go with me through every phase of business. So the five phases I just talked about. That was my proprietary look at like, man, I've got a business over here that's brand new, and I got one over here that's got 300 employees, but I don't want to have to switch systems from here to here.
Right.
So how do I build a system that essentially grows with every phase of business? So I created the Empire operating system. It's got some proprietary ways that we look at things, how we measure things, our KPIs, our stoplight reports, all that type of stuff that's in there. But really, what it is to systemize that business so that it can be passed on.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
How important is automation when it comes to any kind of step in that system?
Yeah, automation's important, but it's one step, right? I always say that there's a lot of different steps towards efficiency and productivity, and automation is just one of them. Just like outsourcing is one of them, right?
Right.
Like a lot of times we get asked the question, should we outsource or should we hire in? It's like, well, we've got a process that determines that. I believe that business is science, and too many entrepreneurs make it art. It's like, well, we're just kind of feeling our way through it. And I think that as the nice thing about running over 100 companies is I've been able to do it over and over and over and over again. So now I can look at it more scientifically and say, oh, this is exactly when I should outsource. This is exactly when I should automate.
I like it.
Yeah.
So Eddie, one of the things that get brought up in conversation a lot is formal education,
Mhm.
going to college,
Yeah.
right? Percentage wise, how much does that really feed into real entrepreneurship?
Yeah. That's a hard question. And here's why. Because I was the person that said college doesn't matter. And unless you're a doctor or dentist, or you
Right.
have to have some sort of formal training. Except for my 18-year-old who's a freshman in college just came to me this past month, and he said, "Hey, Dad, I don't think I want to go back to college." I was like, "Whoa, whoa, wait, what are you doing? What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Yeah, I don't think so." He's like, "I've actually heard you say this before." He's like, "Why,
Oh
why?" He's
man.
like, and I was like, "Yeah, you're right." And I said, "Well, I don't think college is necessary. It's hard to say if it's important or not because it's so unique to the individual."
Right.
For me, was college important? Probably not. Like I have a lot of degrees and I don't use any of them, and it really didn't put me any further forward. And I really am not even in contact with all the people I knew in college, so it's like,
Right.
I just don't know that it mattered. Was it a maturing process for me? Sure. Did it teach me things? Sure. But in the end, there's a hustle inside that no college gave me. There's a fire in there that wasn't stoked by university. As a matter of fact, it was almost extinguished a couple times, you know?
Wow.
And so, my middle son, he's a freshman in college this year. He's thinking about it. And what we talked about is I was like, you know what? No matter what, you're gonna have to get education of some kind.
Right.
So if you choose to not take college as an education path, what's the education path going to be? Right? Like I said, what do you want to do in life? Where are you going to go? And he talked about a couple things. I said, what if I paid you to just go do that instead of pay? What if you went to a whatever you want to do in life, right? Like you're going to go build a business. What if you went to the business owner you wanted and I said to you, I'm going to pay you and you go work for him for free. That's education still, right? And
Right.
so, like for me, it's like I think I'm okay with the alternative path, knowing that education is still going to be needed. I mean, like I got a lot of education in business. It didn't come from a university, it came from me, with my hands to the plow and actually doing the work. And so I think that that's where I'm at is I think that education is going to come from somewhere. You just got to choose the right education. And I don't think college is always the right education.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you on that. The fire inside.
Yeah.
You just said that.
Mhm.
What is that? And I want you to answer that as 5-year-old Eddie,
Yeah.
because I feel like entrepreneurship, that fire
Yeah.
starts very early
Very
in
early.
life.
Yeah. Very early. Um, my dad left his 9 to 5 job, and I watched my dad at 4, 5, 6 years old start forming a path out of his own. I watched him through fear, through everything else. I watched him build his own business, and what I loved was my dad got to create the world that he lives in. And for
Mm,
me, there was something about creation that was just that it was like, I don't want to live in somebody else's world. I want to create my own. It's like that was the fire that was, I think that was that came out early on. It was just this passion and desire to create what I wanted. I remember my first corporate job, I hated it. Mainly because they just told me like, just go sit back at your cubicle and stop giving us your ideas. And I'd have ideas on how to fix things, how to change things, how to make them better, how to make more money, and they would just go, no, no, just do your job. Like stop talking to us. And that's when I realized that this isn't for me.
right.
But that fire is more than just that today. I love creating the world I get to exist in, but now it's about creating the world for others. It's about making an impact on this world. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you added the fuel to it,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
You add more fuel to it, it's going to
Yeah.
grow. So that fire, obviously you talked about when you were young
Mhm.
and you saw it in your father. And then what about when you were like in high school age?
Yeah.
Because high school age, when you get that fire,
Yeah.
you start to like start hustling,
You do.
regardless
Yeah.
if it's selling, sneakers,
Yeah.
to your buddies or whatever, like you're
Yeah.
doing something to make some cash.
Yeah. Yeah. What I realized was my dad, as an entrepreneur, always had companies. He had one or two at the time, and there was always work to be done. And if I was willing to work, I got repaid with money. And the money actually gave me the freedom to do what I wanted to do. So early on, it was just this exchange of time, like, hey, I'll give you my time, you give me the money, and then I get to go do what I actually want to do. I could have the cars, I could have whatever I wanted. That was kind of the early fire, and having a dad that had businesses that I could just plug into, even though I didn't get paid well, it was just work. He owned a drywall company, so if I went and cleaned out the houses after the guys hung drywall, I got paid, and
Yeah.
so and there was something about that reward that stoked it even more in me, like, okay, well, I can control this. One thing that my parents never did. So I come from 3 generations of real estate investors. My grandfather did really well. My dad, a lot of wealthier families, in order to pass their wealth on, they don't pass it through dollars. They pass it through resourcefulness. They basically, my dad never gave me money, but what he would say is like, I'll open any door for you. I'll connect you with anybody you need to connect with. I'm not giving you a dime, right? Like, and my grandfather did the same thing with my father. And so what you learn is resourcefulness. And then when you understand like, oh, this brings what I want, all of a sudden, then it starts reframing like, well, what's possible? And it's that early fire. Like you said, it's just it's gas on it, and then it just keeps growing and growing. The unique thing is my mother is also an entrepreneur. So my
Oh
dad
wow.
has businesses and my mom has businesses. So I don't know that I really had a
I mean,
choice,
you were
Yeah.
exposed to it for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I like how you use the word like resources,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, because other people would look at that and says, "Oh, well, you're just privileged,"
Yeah.
right? What's the difference?
The difference is uh some people give children resources, they give them money. Some give them resourcefulness, no money, just opportunity, connections, relationships. And I was privileged. There's no, like there's no arguing that. But I never got a dollar. I still paid rent when I lived at home.
Yeah.
Like it was cheaper to live at college than to live at my house
Yeah.
because my dad charged rent.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
dad actually did the same thing. I was in high school paying $500 a month,
Yeah.
and I was just like, "Man," I was pissed about that, but it taught me a lot.
It teaches you everything. And so, and my dad taught me a lot about the world system. I would say, man, I really would like a pair of sneakers for, even just playing basketball. And he would say, okay. And he would say, well, here's the 5 jobs that you could go do to earn the money. So what he did was he taught me the world system. The world system is if you're willing to go work for it, then you can have it.
Right.
And so it was the same thing at home. There was a list of things on the refrigerator that if I wanted to go earn some money, there it was. I do the same thing with my boys. It's like,
That's cool.
you want $10, go clean the garage. You want 15, go wash the car. And so you can go earn it anytime you want to. And so instead of just giving resources, we give resourcefulness.
Yeah. Going back to that whole fire thing,
Mhm,
and for the entrepreneurs that are out there that are questioning right now as they listen
mhm.
to the podcast, like, do I have the fire in me?
Yeah.
If they're questioning it, they
Mhm,
probably might have the fire, might not.
mhm.
Can someone who doesn't have the fire in them get the fire?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there is a fire in just about everybody. There's very few people that are just really, truly complacent. I think it's just been extinguished in them.
Mm,
The world's system, the society, education isn't built to stoke that. It's not built to stoke entrepreneurship. I mean, I went to an Ivy League school for my master's, and there was 0 teachers at this Ivy League school that actually had run a business. And so I was actually in business while getting my master's, and I would ask questions and they didn't know the answer,
wow.
right? All it did was extinguish the fire,
Yeah.
and education kind of does that sometimes. And then cautious parents do that. We don't want our kids to fail. And so we try to, helicopter parent them and make sure they don't fail. And it's like all these things. And the thing is I think what happens is we if they feel like the fire is even there a little bit, they need to get around people where there is fire, right? Like the thing is if you and I were in a room and there's a guy questioning, I know you got a fire because I can feel it, right? Like I know you're pushing, you're driving. There's one inside of me. I'm pushing,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
driving. So if you and I were in a room and somebody's questioning it and they're around us, it's either going to stoke it or it's going to go away. They're going
Right.
to feel it or it's going to go away. So what happens is most people they have these like little flicker this little flame inside, but they're not around the right people. Because they're not around the right people, it doesn't stoke that flame.
Right.
It's like that's what the Aspire Tour is all about. Is I want to stoke that flame so hot that people run out of there just like ready to go and conquer the world. And when you're around it, you know if you got it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with that, man. It's like, I always remember this, like this visual of when they say, you know, the people that you got to surround yourself around,
Mhm.
right? I got this visual that I saw early on when I was like in my teens,
Yeah.
and it was a guy on top of a ladder
Hmm.
with his arm out, and it basically said you got to be the guy underneath them because you need people that are going to bring you up,
Yeah. Sure.
right? And that's what it is. It's
It
really
is.
surrounding yourself around those people that are going to light that fire and you
Mhm.
hold you accountable
Yeah.
too,
For sure.
So
Accountability is huge.
yeah. So, Eddie, man, you're a sharp looking dude, right? Most people be like, man, this guy, all these businesses, all this stress. How does he look so sharp?
Hmm.
So, now we're going to go ahead and dive deep into your whole health,
Sure.
what you do to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And I want to start off with the mind,
Hmm.
man, because a lot of stress. And, yes, you exited do a lot of businesses, but
Hmm.
I'm more than sure you've had a lot of failures throughout
Hmm.
the process. You've
Sure.
had partners that, you get upset at, they're upset at you. That's just part of business.
Yeah.
Me in the world of franchising, I've had franchises that have failed, other ones that are successful, and it just happens.
Right.
And, I deal with litigation, lawsuits, all that stuff, which I know that puts tremendous amount of stress
Mhm.
on someone.
Yeah.
How do you take care of your mind?
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. There is nobody that is absent from stress and pressure. It just is what it is.
Right.
So number one, you got to give yourself some grace because most people put the pressure on themselves, right?
Mm,
Like most of the pressure is not from without, it's from within. And at some point, you've got to recognize that. And you got to decide, like, where's this pressure coming from? Because I can control the pressure from within, right? And that pressure from within is usually much greater than the pressure that's without, right? Like yeah, I probably have a dozen lawsuits against me at all times, right?
Right.
Like it's just the nature of it. Now, when I got my very first lawsuit against me, it freaked me out. Now it's just like, it's just legal bills. It's
Right.
just like how it's insurance and legal bills. It just is what it is. Um, I've had companies rise and fall and people take advantage of me and business partners steal from me and all of that type of stuff. But it comes down to, it does come down to the mind. And as you mature in business and in life, you just naturally begin to take on more pressure. And the pressure is different. If 25-year-old Eddie felt the pressure that 45-year-old Eddie
Oh
felt,
God.
he would have been crushed. He would have had ulcers, he would have been in the hospital, heart attacks, everything else.
Yeah.
Today, I actually feel like I have less pressure than I felt like I had on me at 25,
It's almost like you can breathe,
Yeah, I can
right?
breathe. And
Yeah.
part of it is just maturation. It's just getting to a place where it's the next day, just get to the next day, get to the next day, because then you get enough days under your belt that the maturity begins to at least start to release some of it. Now, it doesn't mean that I've got it under control. I literally, I do blood panels every quarter. Have a doctor look at my blood panels. I go through this kind of proprietary way of looking at my blood and my health, and all of my supplements are crafted specific to that.
Nice.
My peptides, all that type of stuff is all specific to where I'm at every single quarter, and we change it up every quarter. But I will tell you, this last quarter, my doctor, he said, "Hey, this cortisol, man, you got to get this under control right now." He's like, "You picked up 5 pounds. I'm gonna tell you why. It's because of cortisol." And he was like, he was
Mm,
like, "We need to add a couple of things he said the regimen, and one of them was deep breathing exercises, more water, like just basic things. Like it wasn't I had to add a bunch of supplements or I had to go, to some Buddhist retreat or something like that. It
right,
was
right.
like I promised him that every day when I got out of bed, I'd spend the first, 30 seconds to a minute just doing some deep breathing exercises, oxygenating the cells. I'd put water in. I own a coffee company, so I usually go straight to coffee. He was like, I want you to have water, at least 18 ounces. He said, before you ever take your first cup of coffee, coffee can't
Amazing.
happen until 90 minutes in. Right. So, like, I'm living at a very regimented life to get the most out of it. And health, I'm very health conscious, but that, that helps the mind
Right.
right? It's like what we don't realize is like that cortisol that's building up, it's part of the stress we're putting on ourselves. It's the stress. If we will actually consciously be aware of our health and take steps to fix it, it's amazing how the rest of the body just falls in line.
Right.
When I get up and I breathe and I get up and I drink the water and I do these things, like I already know that it's working. I can actually already sense it and feel it. And part of it is just where you put your focus and your energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And everything's balancing out. And,
Yeah.
it's like earlier when we were backstage before the podcast, one of the things you mentioned is like, it's like, man, I am focusing more on my health the older I get.
Right.
Right. Which, that's one thing. Same thing here. It's just
Mhm.
like, I drink less,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
If anything, I barely even drink,
Yeah.
because
Right.
I'm thinking to myself, it's like, man, you know what? I'm not in my early 20s no
Yeah.
more. I can't
Yeah.
even compensate for this
Yep.
stuff. I'm like out for like 2 days,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So, how important is mental focus and clarity for you?
It's huge. And the reason I said that to you earlier about I'm focusing and the biohacking and all that stuff is so much more important today because I'm trying to gain an edge and I'm 45. And if I get up and I work out at 5 a.m., which I don't do that because by 6 or 7 o'clock and I'm still doing calls at night, I'm pushing thoughts through jello at that point.
Yeah.
Like it's like
Right.
I don't have mental clarity. So what I found is in my early 20s, physique was very important to me.
Right.
Today, physique, I could care less about physique. What I care about is mental clarity. I care about stamina. I care about my ability to put in 12 good hours where I'm mentally there and present. Like that to me is what I'm pursuing today more than anything is output and productivity. I don't care if I can go run 10 miles or not,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's great that you say that, man, because I've been saying that a lot to a lot of my friends that I
Mm,
used to go to high school with and whatnot. And they're like, man, you used to do bodybuilding in your early 20s. You were
mhm,
all jacked. So I was.
yeah.
And my focus was exactly that, the
Mhm,
physique side.
mhm,
Today, that's not my focus.
sure.
Like what I used to do back then, if I do it now, I'll probably get injured and it's
Mhm,
going to set me back.
right.
For me, it's about having energy, not feeling fatigue, making
Right.
sure my immune system's on point,
Got it.
and it's more of health span and longevity at this
Mhm.
point,
Yeah.
you know? So it's great that you said that. Um, when it comes to your health, do you work out
Mhm.
every single day?
I I work out 3 to 4 days a week. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things you mentioned earlier, you said that you have a doctor
Mhm.
that's looking at things quarterly. Now, you're like the ultimate coach,
Mhm.
business coach, you're out there coaching
Mhm.
people. You have your own coaches,
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
right?
Yeah.
So how important is it to have a coach for your health?
Oh, it's vital. The thing is I went through an exercise maybe 6 or 7 years ago where I was introduced to counting macros. And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I started counting macros. This is 6 or 7 years ago. And it's wild when you first learn to count macros, you don't realize what you're putting into your body. And all of a sudden you're counting macros and you're like, "Man, I thought this, pound of almonds I'm taking down at night was a good thing for me." And you realize like, "Man, the amount of fats and the amount of this isn't great for me," you know?
Right.
And so that was like the big first step for me was when I started counting macros. I was like, "Man, I didn't realize what I was actually putting in my body." Like
Right.
I was taught eat these things, do these things, you have the physique you want, lift heavy, do cardio when you need to get rid of some fat, and that was just kind of it. All of a sudden, macros changed everything. Then I realized, like, wait a minute, if this small amount, these actually small amounts actually make that much of an impact on my body, what else am I putting in my body? So then I started getting very conscious of all the toxins and the different things that I'm putting in my body outside of that. And so I think a health coach is really, really important because oftentimes we're just unaware. Like we just don't have an awareness of what our body is doing, the things that we're doing to our body, and the impact it's having on us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You brought up toxins,
Hmm.
and you also brought up about being aware
Hmm.
about what you're putting
Yeah.
into your body. Right now, there's a huge movement called Make America Healthy
Healthy.
Again,
Yep.
right? RFK Jr.,
Hmm.
I'm a big part of this.
Yeah.
I go to their events and
Yeah.
interview a lot of the people and all that great
Yeah.
stuff. Um, what are your thoughts about this whole
I
Maha
love it.
movement?
I love it. I think I am shocked that it's taken this long. That we've known how bad the dyes are for us in our the candies and the foods and stuff like that. I mean, so much so you go to Europe and it's banned and it's totally fine here, right? And
Right.
it's just interesting how unchecked the FDA has been and how tied to big pharma the FDA has been and to the detriment of the American people. And so I'm a huge supporter of it. And I go a little overboard sometimes. Like I get down these rabbit holes of no microplastics and all
Right.
that stuff. I mean, there's a million different things that you can talk about with regard to toxins and the
Yeah.
environment and stuff like that. But I do love that now the government is actually taking steps to protect the American people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go to Europe and you eat the same foods and you feel great. You come here and you eat the same foods and you feel horrible.
Feel like
It's like
crap.
it's just
Yeah.
it's different. It's like you innately and intuitively know that something's different, but nobody's been watching out for the American population.
Yeah, and it's time for that change,
It is time.
and honestly, I didn't think it was gonna happen this soon,
Me either.
and to see something like that happening,
Hmm.
and it's happening at the top leadership level,
Hmm.
so it's exciting, it's gonna be a positive thing for our kids,
Yeah,
our future grandchildren, all of that stuff.
100%.
So, however we can, continue to contribute, all of us, that's what we have to do for sure.
Absolutely.
So, Eddie, as we wrap up here, man, um, I'm gonna ask you, you got something big coming up,
Hmm.
right? You mentioned it a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to make sure we cover that
Yeah.
because this is big. I mean, you got
It's
a,
big.
a virtual platform and
Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah.
What is it that you guys have
So
coming
we
up?
built the Aspire Tour. It's the world's largest business tour today. We were 27 stops in a row. Every single month, 3, 4, 5,000 people.
You guys got the top
Um,
people there
it's
too, man.
crazy. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's it's pretty wild, and it has just grown and exploded. I didn't expect it at all. We thought we'd do one event and see how it went, and then it was just like, okay, next event, next event. Then we planned a whole year, and now we're 2.5 years in and haven't
wow.
stopped. We've done Madison Square Garden and Toyota Center in Dallas. I mean, it's been a wild ride. But, what I wanted to do is democratize the information so that everybody could have access to it. So we decided in June, coming up to put on, our, Business Growth 2020 or 2025. And we've asked every one of our big celebrities to come be a part of it, and it's actually a completely free ticket. I want to give this
Wow.
information that we give at the Aspire Tour, but for free. And so we're doing it virtually so that everybody can see it from their living room or their office. And we've called out all stops, and we got every one of the Sharks, I think minus Mark Cuban. We've got Kevin O'Leary, Barbara Corcoran, Robert Herjavec. I got Kendra Scott, jewelry. I've got Kevin Costner, David Goggins is coming to it, and it's just Gary V. I mean, it's just like it's
Wow.
crazy. I mean, it's 20 of the biggest celebrities in business that you could imagine, and I want to give that information away for free. So we're trying to put on one of the largest business growth events that's ever been put on, and that's coming up.
Amazing,
Yeah,
man. I can't wait to actually
yeah,
attend and participate. So
for sure.
that's amazing. Um, all right. So as we wrap it up here, man, I'm going to ask you. You have to answer with just one word.
Okay,
I'm going to name a few names,
okay,
and whatever first comes to mind,
mm,
you're going to give it to me. All right. And this is going to be specific to people that are in this like coaching world,
sure.
etc.
Okay,
Gary V,
innovative,
Patrick Bet David,
stoic,
Grant Cardone,
hype,
David Meltzer,
smart,
Wes Watson.
intense.
Awesome. Cool. I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. You're quick on it too. So, Eddie, if there's one person listening or watching this podcast that resonates with today's message,
Mhm.
what is one thing you can leave them off with?
For me, what I would love to leave every person I come in contact with is that whatever you believe is going to give you fulfillment, hurry up and get to the end of that road because it's most likely not going to get you fulfillment. Fulfillment's always going to be at the end of helping someone else. A lot of young people, young guys, they'll follow me and they'll say, I like your cars or I like all this stuff. And I always say, hurry up and buy the Lambo, man. Go buy the jet. Get there as fast as you can because you're going to be as lonely with that jet as you are today, like I was. And then you'll get to real brass tacks, what really matters in life. So instead of pushing them away and, kind of squashing their dreams, say, go get it because you're going to be where I'm at. And I'm in a place where the jet doesn't matter. The cars don't matter. The vacations don't matter. The helping that orphan matters more than anything in my life. And so fulfillment always comes at the end of making an impact on someone else, and it never comes at the end of a dollar, a car, a vacation. And that's the message I want to leave: is that purpose is the anchor that we should all be pushing towards because that's where we gain fulfillment.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And if people want to find you, how do they find you?
I promised for this calendar year I would answer all my DMs, and so I know it's a horrible idea, and it's hours and hours and hours worth of responding. But Eddie Wilson official on all the social platforms, and if somebody wants to talk, just tell them to DM me.
Awesome, man. I
Yeah,
love it. Eddie, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast,
thank
man.
you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Guys, you guys heard it from Eddie. You got to find your purpose. It's about impact. My father would always tell me that you can't receive with a closed hand. And what you receive, it's not necessarily what you want. It's going to be what you need to get that fulfillment. Make sure you subscribe, follow, tap, share, do all of that fun stuff. You'll see all the links down below, and we'll see you for the next one.